Someone is deeply in love with you right now. And it all began because of one quiet thing you did without even realizing how powerful it would become. Stay with this message until the end, because what you are about to understand could completely change the way you see what has been happening around you. You did not arrive here by accident. This is not just a dramatic introduction or a random collection of words. There is a reason your eyes paused here instead of scrolling away. There is a reason your attention stayed longer than usual. Something inside you became still for a moment. That feeling is not empty. It may be pointing toward something that is unfolding in another person's heart. Somewhere, someone who is connected to your life, whether they are close to you now or were once an important part of your journey, is experiencing powerful emotions. And those emotions are centered around you. Their heart feels unsettled, not because you chased after them, not because you asked for too much, and not because you tried to force love into existence. The truth is almost the complete opposite. Their emotions became stronger because you quietly stopped doing something they had started taking for granted. You stopped giving endless attention. You stopped offering unlimited emotional energy. You stopped making yourself available every single time they expected it. That one peaceful change slowly transformed everything. Before we go any further, ask yourself one question. Have you noticed how people often realize the value of something only after it becomes less available? Keep listening, because the answer might explain more than you expected. There came a point when you made a quiet promise to yourself. It was not a public announcement. There was no argument. There was no dramatic goodbye. It happened inside your own heart. You decided to protect your peace. You stopped stretching yourself so far that you forgot your own needs. You stopped explaining your feelings over and over to people who were not truly listening. You stopped believing that every problem was yours to solve. Little by little, you stopped carrying emotional burdens that never belonged on your shoulders in the first place. Without planning it, you created space. It was not done to hurt anyone. It was never about revenge or teaching someone a lesson. It happened because you finally realized that constantly sacrificing yourself was no longer healthy. That quiet decision changed the direction of everything. The person watching from the other side never imagined this version of you. They had become comfortable with the version who always stayed, always understood, always adjusted, always waited, and forgave faster than most people would. They believed your kindness would never run out. They assumed your support would always be there whenever they decided to return. Because of that belief, they delayed effort. They postponed difficult conversations. They convinced themselves there would always be another chance. If this feels familiar, stay until the end, because what happened next explains why their emotions became impossible for them to ignore. When your constant giving slowly disappeared, they began to notice something they had depended on without fully appreciating it. At first, the difference seemed small. Maybe they thought you were simply busy. Maybe they assumed life had become more demanding. They expected everything to return to normal after a little time passed. But silence has a strange way of growing louder. As the days continued, your absence became impossible to overlook. That is when confusion entered their mind. People often fail to notice steady kindness while it is always present, but they notice its absence almost immediately. Suddenly, they found themselves thinking about you far more often than before. Ordinary moments started reminding them of conversations you once shared. Tiny memories they had ignored began returning without warning. They remembered the patience you showed even when they had not fully earned it. They remembered your understanding during difficult moments. They remembered how safe your presence felt without realizing it at the time. The consistency they once overlooked became the very thing they missed the most. It is surprising how quickly the mind starts searching for what it believed would never disappear. And that search can become stronger with every passing day. Keep watching, because what happens inside someone's heart after this point is something many people never see until it is already too late. This is the moment when emotional attachment starts becoming much deeper and far more complicated than most people expect. Not because everything suddenly becomes perfect, and not because every problem disappears, but because the feeling of control quietly slips away. When someone realizes they no longer have easy access to your time, your attention, or your emotional warmth, something changes inside them. Questions begin to appear. They wonder why they failed to appreciate what they had. They ask themselves why they believed you would always stay available no matter what happened. They think about why they treated your presence as something ordinary instead of something valuable. These thoughts often become strongest during quiet evenings, lonely nights, or those slow moments when life finally becomes still. They may unlock their phone, stop when they see your name, then put it down without saying a word. They may write a message, read it several times, and erase every sentence before sending it. On the outside, they continue acting as if everything is normal. They smile, they work, they laugh with other people. But inside, something feels very different. The space you left behind is no longer just physical. It has become emotional. You were never just another person they talked to from time to time. You were someone who understood parts of them that they rarely showed anyone else. You noticed small details others missed. You sensed emotions they tried to hide. You made them feel accepted without asking them to become someone different. Stay with this until the end, because the next part explains why that feeling becomes so difficult for them to ignore. When someone loses a connection that made them feel truly understood, they rarely miss only the other person. They also miss the version of themselves that came alive inside that relationship. That is why the feeling becomes so powerful. There is a simple truth behind it. Many people do not fully recognize the importance of something while it is still part of their everyday life. They only understand its value after it is no longer there. The value itself has not changed. What changes is their awareness. Your silence created exactly that kind of awareness. Without trying to, you removed the emotional mirror they had quietly depended on. You reflected patience, kindness, understanding, and steady attention back to them. Now that reflection is missing, they are left facing themselves in ways they never expected. At first, they may avoid those feelings. They may bury themselves in work. They may spend more time with friends. They may distract themselves with endless conversations, entertainment, or busy schedules. They may even convince themselves that none of this really matters. But distractions eventually lose their power. Quiet moments always return. And when those moments arrive, comparison begins. New conversations feel empty. Other people do not create the same peace. Familiar places remind them of memories they thought they had forgotten. Slowly, they realize something they never admitted before. Your presence gave them emotional stability in ways they never fully appreciated. That realization grows heavier every day. Keep listening, because this is where the story takes an important turn. This is the point where emotions often become much stronger. Not always in the healthiest way, but in a way that is deeply human. They may feel regret over missed chances. They may feel confused about why your absence affects them so much. At the same time, pride can stand in the way. One part of them wants to reach out. Another part refuses to admit they allowed something meaningful to slip away, so they stay trapped inside the same cycle. They think, they remember, they question every choice. They replay old conversations again and again, searching for answers that were always right in front of them. While all of this is happening, your life is becoming quieter in a different way. You are no longer exhausting yourself trying to prove your value. You are no longer explaining your heart to people who refuse to understand it. You are no longer carrying responsibilities that never belonged to you. And strangely, your silence says more than endless words ever could. It invites reflection. It encourages accountability. It creates enough distance that important truths can no longer be avoided. But here is something you should never forget. Strong feelings alone are not enough. Feeling love is different from knowing how to protect it. Missing someone is different from being ready to treat them with care and respect. Even if they think about you every day, that does not automatically mean they have become the person you deserve. Real growth only appears through honest choices repeated over time. Without that, emotions simply continue moving in circles, bringing people close, pushing them away, and repeating the same painful pattern. Because of that, your decisions should never depend only on how deeply someone feels about you. Look at what they do. Watch their consistency. Notice their effort. Pay attention to whether their actions finally match their emotions. That matters much more than beautiful words spoken during emotional moments. The distance between you was never created as a way to control them or make them suffer. It happened because you finally chose to respect yourself. That quiet decision changed everything between you. You showed them what steady care looked like without asking for control. You offered kindness without losing your own identity. You gave support without forgetting your own needs. Then, instead of continuing to overgive, you stepped back. Now they are left facing the empty space your presence once filled. They think about the conversations they overlooked. They think about the comfort they assumed would always remain. They think about the opportunities they allowed to pass by. That realization carries real emotional weight. But something even more important is happening beneath the surface. When you stepped away, you also removed the emotional balance they had been quietly leaning on. Now they must sit with their own thoughts instead of escaping into your presence. That is uncomfortable. Yet it is also where true awareness begins. Silence often reveals what noise keeps hidden. Distance often brings the clearest understanding. Still, be careful. If you rush back only to make things easier for them, nothing truly changes. The old cycle begins again. They avoid growth, and your healing is interrupted once more. The space between you is accomplishing something words never could. It is revealing reality. It is uncovering old habits. It is bringing hidden patterns into the light. And sometimes that quiet truth becomes the beginning of the biggest transformation of all. In that quiet space, something very important begins to stand out. The right person does not wait until they lose you before they understand your value. They see it while you are still beside them. They appreciate your presence before distance ever has a chance to teach them a lesson. That is why this season of your life is not about proving your worth or chasing someone who is unsure. It is about seeing what your absence quietly reveals. If someone finds their way back into your life, it should never be only because they feel lonely or because they suddenly fear losing you forever. It should happen because they have truly grown. Real change is steady. It is shown through actions repeated over time, not emotional promises made in one difficult moment. Anything less simply repeats the same story with different words. And if they never return, that does not erase your value. It only shows they were not prepared for the level of emotional depth you brought into their life. What you offered was genuine. Your care was real, the connection was real, the feelings were real. But not every meaningful connection is meant to stay the same forever. Some people enter your life to teach important lessons. Some arrive to help you transform into someone stronger. Others leave because their role in your journey has already been completed. Stay with this message because the next part explains why that ending may actually become the beginning of something much greater than you expected. Right now, something inside you is quietly changing. Your energy is becoming calmer. Your view of yourself is becoming clearer. You are beginning to understand your own value in a way that no longer depends on someone else's approval. You are no longer willing to make yourself smaller just to keep someone comfortable. That decision changes everything. As time passes, you will notice something that once felt impossible. You will stop searching for certainty from people who remain unsure about you. You will stop chasing answers from those who cannot give them. The right people will recognize your value without needing to lose you first. Because of that, give yourself permission to stay where you are emotionally. There is no need to rush this process. There is no need to force conversations or create outcomes before they are ready. Let time do its work. Let distance reveal what words often hide. More is happening behind the scenes than you can currently see. When you stopped reaching out all the time, you also created a new space inside yourself. At first, that quiet space may have felt strange, maybe even uncomfortable. Your mind had become used to constant thinking, constant worry, constant emotional pressure. But that silence is not your enemy. It is a sign that you are slowly finding your way back to yourself. Keep watching, because this shift becomes even more powerful than most people ever expect. Your thoughts may still return to them from time to time. That is completely natural. Habits built over months or years rarely disappear overnight. But something important is different now. You are no longer abandoning yourself just to keep another person close. For the first time, what remains between you is no longer supported only by your effort. It is resting on truth, and truth has far more strength than one-sided effort ever will. Silence is often misunderstood. Many people think silence means weakness or surrender. In reality, silence can be one of the strongest decisions a person makes. You are no longer carrying emotional responsibility that never truly belonged to you. You are no longer waiting for someone else's approval to feel complete. That quiet confidence begins to show, even if you never speak about it. Other people notice it. They may not know exactly what changed, but they can feel the difference. They slowly realize they had become used to receiving your care without fully appreciating its depth. They had become comfortable resting in your presence without understanding how much emotional balance it gave them. Now that your constant support is no longer there, something feels missing. A gap appears that cannot easily be replaced. Because of that empty space, their thoughts begin changing. Memories return. Regrets surface. They imagine conversations that never happened. They wonder how different things might have been if they had recognized your value sooner. The more they reflect, the more they remember the version of themselves that existed when you were close. Life felt lighter then. Conversations felt easier. Ordinary days carried a quiet sense of stability they never truly noticed. Now, without your steady presence, life can feel more uncertain, even if they never admit it aloud. At the same time, your own view becomes clearer. You may still question yourself once in a while. You may wonder if you walked away too soon or created too much distance, but eventually you return to the only question that truly matters. Did you step away to hurt someone, or did you step away because staying was hurting you? The answer changes everything. You left because remaining in that situation was slowly making you lose pieces of yourself. Real love should never require you to disappear. It should never ask you to become smaller just to keep another person comfortable. You chose to leave a place where your kindness was no longer being treated with the care it deserved. That is not failure, it is wisdom. It is self-respect becoming visible through your actions. By creating distance, you also sent a quiet message without speaking a single word. You showed that access to your heart is not unlimited when it is not treated with honesty and respect. If someone is truly willing to grow, that realization may inspire lasting change. If they are not, your distance becomes the very thing that protects your peace. Sometimes real victory does not feel loud. Sometimes it arrives in silence. Sometimes it even feels like loneliness for a while. But that feeling is not emptiness. It is grief for the future you once imagined. It is your heart adjusting to a different path. Do not mistake that grief for failure. You gave sincerely. You loved honestly. And you stepped back when carrying everything alone became too heavy. Healthy boundaries are never punishment. They are clarity. They remind you where your responsibility ends and where someone else's responsibility finally begins. You are not responsible for how someone reacts to the consequences of choices they made on their own. That truth is important to remember because many people spend far too much time carrying guilt that never belonged to them. This is also the stage where both your heart and your mind begin learning a completely different pattern. You start realizing that love does not have to exist alongside constant worry, endless overthinking, or emotional exhaustion. Once that lesson settles inside you, it changes you in lasting ways. Even if someone comes back later, you cannot fully return to the old version of yourself that ignored your own limits just to keep peace. Awareness leaves a permanent mark. You are no longer the person who accepted mixed signals as something normal. You are moving through a season of change. You are no longer standing where you once were, yet you have not fully arrived at the person you are becoming. That space in the middle can feel uncertain. It can feel lonely. But it is also where the strongest personal growth takes place. Stay with this until the end because what happens next is often the part people never expect. Little by little, your emotions begin to settle. The urge to constantly study their behavior becomes weaker. The need to search for hidden signs or secret meanings slowly fades away. Instead, something much stronger starts growing inside you. It is a quiet confidence that no longer depends on someone else's actions. As time passes, you begin accepting what really happened without needing endless explanations or repeated reassurance. You understand that the connection was genuine, but you also recognize that every connection has limits. Those limits appeared because the timing was not right, emotional readiness was missing, or both people were simply growing in different directions. Accepting that truth does not close your heart, it actually opens it in a healthier way. You are no longer placing your own life on hold while waiting for someone else to figure out their feelings. You are moving forward again, even if each step feels small. And while that change is happening inside you, something quietly begins changing on the other side as well. They start noticing that you are no longer waiting in the same emotional place. They realize your energy has shifted. Whether they fully understand why or not, they can sense that the old connection no longer feels the same. That realization encourages deeper reflection, not because you forced them to think differently, but because your absence created room where avoidance once existed. When your attention is no longer filling that space, their own thoughts naturally begin filling it instead. Memories rise without warning. Familiar moments replay again and again. They remember your patience. They remember your kindness. They remember how dependable you were. They also begin remembering how easily those gifts were overlooked. Keep listening because this next realization explains why those memories become so difficult for them to ignore. What often makes these emotions even stronger is not simply missing you. It is missing the version of themselves they experienced while they were close to you. Many people do not only miss another person, they miss how they felt when they were accepted, understood, and emotionally supported by that person. Your distance quietly removed a comfort they had come to depend on without realizing it. That is why thoughts of you keep returning to their mind, not because you are chasing them, but because you stopped. This is where many people misunderstand what is really happening. Strong emotions alone do not mean someone has learned how to love in a healthy way. Deep feelings are not the same as emotional maturity. Missing someone is not the same as knowing how to protect the relationship. A person can care deeply and still repeat unhealthy patterns if they have not truly changed. That is why this chapter is not about returning to what once felt familiar. It is about seeing the truth with clear eyes. You showed them steady care without trying to control them. You offered your presence without placing pressure on them. Then you stepped back when the balance disappeared. Now they are left with the silence your absence created. And sometimes silence speaks more clearly than words ever could. Distance has a way of revealing what constant closeness often hides. Reflection becomes unavoidable when the noise finally fades. At some point, they may try to step back into your life. Sometimes they understand exactly why. Other times, they simply feel drawn back without knowing the reason. They may want to see whether the door is still open or whether the same easy access still exists. This is where your inner strength becomes so important. Responding too quickly often brings both people back into the same unhealthy cycle. Staying calm and grounded changes everything. It invites both of you to face reality instead of escaping into old habits. That kind of honesty is uncomfortable because real growth always asks people to look closely at themselves. You may still experience moments when memories return with surprising strength. That does not mean you have to act on every feeling that appears. It simply means the connection mattered. Real connections leave lasting impressions, but not every meaningful connection is meant to continue in exactly the same way forever. Some enter your life to teach lessons rather than stay for a lifetime. Once those lessons are understood, the purpose of the connection begins to change. If someone returns, let it be because they have genuinely grown into a person who can meet you with the same care, honesty, and consistency you always offered. Anything less is only the old pattern wearing a different face. And if they never return, that does not mean you are hard to love. It simply means your heart was ready for a depth they had not yet learned how to match. It simply means they were not prepared for the level of emotional depth you brought into the connection. The right relationship never asks you to become smaller, explain yourself over and over again, or spend your days waiting in uncertainty. If these words speak to you so deeply, there is a reason. Something inside you already recognizes this truth. A part of you has known it for a long time, even if your mind was still searching for answers. You are no longer the same person who accepted confusion as something normal. You are becoming someone who values emotional peace more than emotional chasing. That change may seem quiet from the outside, but inside it is transforming everything. When you stepped back, you did not only create distance between yourself and another person, you also removed the reflection they had quietly relied on without realizing it. That reflection was your kindness. It was your attention. It was your steady presence. Without those things surrounding them every day, they are now left alone with thoughts they once avoided. At first, they may try to stay busy. They may throw themselves into work, spend more time around other people, or fill every free moment with distractions. They may even tell themselves this feeling will disappear on its own. But silence has a way of returning no matter how much someone tries to escape it. And when it returns, so do the memories. Stay with this until the very end, because the next realization explains why that silence becomes impossible to ignore. As those quiet moments become more frequent, reflection slowly takes over. They begin replaying conversations in their mind. They think about small moments they once overlooked. They question the timing of everything. They wonder where things started changing and whether something could have been different. Yet, beneath all those questions, one simple truth quietly waits to be seen. You did not step away because your feelings disappeared. You stepped away because you finally started caring for yourself with the same kindness you had always given to everyone else. For many people, that truth is difficult to accept.